It is December 1st, 2014, and at the start of every month, the first thing we ask you to do is do some forecasting for that specific month and in some cases quarter. So I thought it would be appropriate to do our first flipped sales meeting on forecasting. We're going to do these flipped sales meetings periodically, and we're going to try and do this for a couple different reasons. First of all, conference calls are probably the worst way of disseminating information. They're bad for comprehension, they're bad for retention. You guys are driving around in your car at 80 miles an hour, and it's very difficult to be engaged in a conversation about a specific topic. So conference calls are very difficult. The second is student perspective. We sell a program based on the flipped classroom or based on students driving their own instructional day. And so what do we do in turn is we spend our time on conference calls talking about and sharing information that way. So I thought we'd give a little bit of student perspective for you to have conversations with customers and for us to have conversations as to what we like about it, what we don't like about it, things like that. This might not be the primary way that we do things, but we're going to give it a whirl. The third is individualized instruction. The last few months we've been doing some business health reviews. We've been having similar conversations with all of you guys, but then each one of you, we tweak the conversation slightly to align with what's happening specific in your territory. And so there's nothing different there. We want to individualize the instruction here with you guys. So I'm going to go into a couple things. First of all, let's talk about my philosophy on forecasting in general. Forecasting low is better than forecasting high and performing low. I think this is critical. We have to take all the emotion of wanting to do well in a specific month or quarter and expecting to do well, and take the emotion, take the optimism out of that number, because putting that in the number really it tends to lead to inaccuracy, which tends to lead to us adding numbers that shouldn't be put in there. So we're also within that individualized instruction piece. There are going to be three questions that I'm going to ask you guys to kind of think about while watching this video, and then while having your considering or one-on-one time that we're going to have together. Okay, so the first question is, what factors do I consider when building my forecast? Do I consider just the pipeline? Do I consider sales history, recent conversations I have with customers? What is it that I consider when I'm looking at and building my forecast? The second thing is, do I know the purchasing process of the customers that are in my forecast? I know you guys know how customers buy. Specifically in our industry, a lot of them have the same buying routines, but they all have their own little nuances and tweaks. Do we know for our forecast, those opportunities, what the purchasing process is for the new opportunities, what that purchasing process is? And let's consider that when we're talking about our one-on-ones. Finally, where are my deals getting stuck in the sales process? And are any of the deals that are in my forecast at that stage within the sales process? So for example, if I tend to get opportunities stuck directly after a presentation, and I have these forecasted right now, and it's at the end of a presentation, then potentially this is going to be a concern, right? A red flag to build into our forecast. All right, so let's do kind of a post-mortem as to what November looked like. And this is all important because we're changing our philosophy. We're obviously still have that strong focus to move things at the bottom of the funnel to a close, but we also want to build the top end of the funnel and move things down the funnel so that we can get more accuracy and we have more opportunities at the different stages. And we'll get into that in just a second. Originally, at the beginning of the quarter, you guys all gave me a forecast by month. That total forecast rolled up to about $4.9 million. The forecast for November was $2 million. We kind of tweaked some things after October, and we said, let's give me a high and a low forecast for November. So with that, you guys gave me a high of $2.9 million, which seemed pretty reasonable considering our original forecast was $2 million. And you gave me a low forecast of $158,000. This opened up a world of conversation around the original forecast, because this this identified to me that we had a ton of optimism in our normal original forecast in November. What we actually ended up doing is $191,000, pretty close to our low forecast, still far off from our what would be considered our quota for the month, but it's okay. We were at least close to our our forecast. But when you take a closer look at the actual revenue, we did $191,000. $108,000 of that was in one deal in Montgomery ISD that the Cassidy closed. We had 8 out of the 10 territories that booked lower than what their forecast was originally. So if you gave me a forecast of, let's say, $10,000 and you booked $5,000, your forecast was higher than what you actually booked. And that's the kiss of death. That's the sin of all sins. We want to make sure that our low forecast is lower than what our actual revenue is. Our revenue should either be at that number or above that number. So let's take a look at how I might build our forecast based on what I'm seeing in the pipeline. When I look at this pipeline, and this is our pipeline, what's remaining left in the quarter, I have a couple things that I think of when I see this. First of all, the $2.2 million in best view with this quarter as their close date, I would say that's probably good money, right? And we'll get into what best view looks like here shortly. Leaning our way, another $157,000. I'd say based on what that sales stage is, that's probably a pretty safe stage. When I take a look at the above stage, I see this $1.2 million, and it has to not only go from above to best view, but it has to go through in and leaning our way and all the way to best view. And that sometimes can take a month or two. Typically, we have opportunities that can sit in this above stage for a long period of time. I think it would be fair for us to say that if we have an opportunity that's in the above stage and it's within this month, I would not build that opportunity into our pipeline. I would say the same about most of the opportunities in the in stage. Let's take a look at that specifically. So opportunities in the above stage, this is what it looks like, right? So, the customer maybe initiates an inbound call or requests a demo or a free trial or maybe validates our SSO. None of those things say we're going to buy this month. So I wouldn't build those into our forecast. I would probably even move that opportunity to the following month because it's quite unlikely that's going to move all the way through the sales cycle. Opportunities in the end stage are similar, right? We have some better buying signs in that they might agree to our SSO or introduce us to some additional key buying influences or maybe participate, giving us in the straw man, participate and give us, number of schools, number of students, things like that, but still not near as far as progression goes to the stage where we would build that into our forecast, unless they're right on the precipice or the cusp of moving to the next stage, which would be, and I'm going to look at these two stages together, leaning our way or best view. If the economic buyer is engaged, they're giving you candid feedback, they have validated that here's what our decision criteria is, and here's the timeline. Those are all wonderful buying signs, especially if that is within the time frame that we're looking at to make this sale. When it comes to best view, we also have, obviously these signs are amazing, right? So purchase order issued, gone to the board, the economic buyer has given you a verbal. All those things are fantastic buying signs that we probably want to build in the forecast, assuming, of course, that all these things can happen within the sales process. When you look at the sales process, this is just a quick example. It might take 1 to 30 days, could be 60 days in some cases. Some of you guys have customers and you guys know who you are, that it could take a year to get these things through the process after they've already agreed and they already signed a contract saying that it's going to be approved. So you have to know their process. Sometimes, let's take today, if we got approval today, from a verbal approval, and they said they want to issue a purchase order, then it has to go to a board agenda, and then it has to be board approved. Well, the board meeting could be on the 18th of December. That's 17 more days then they have to cut the PO, then there's vacation, and then maybe we get the PO sent to us. Oh, by the way, our offices are closed at the last 3 days of the quarter, so we can't get that purchase order in. When you think about all those things, should that opportunity be built into this quarter? And that's the kind of thinking that I want us to have, right? I want to reintroduce you to these questions one more time, and then I want to show you quickly a pivot table trick, because I'll send you some pivot tables in the coming months and weeks. I just want to make sure that you guys have access to getting into that information. So those 3 questions again: what factors do I consider when building my forecast? Do I know the purchasing process of the customers that are in my forecast? Where are my deals getting stuck in the sales process? And are any of the deals I'm forecasting at that stage right now? Okay, so just real quickly, wanted to show you, again, here's kind of I wanted to rearrange it, but here's kind of a pivot table. You can recognize a pivot table when it has one of these little filters here. Anytime I say, hey, look at all these opportunities in a linear way and let me know if any of these are valid still. If you just double click on them, it'll pull up all those opportunities into a spreadsheet, and you can say, okay, yes, yes, no, and you can take a look at those specific ones that are built in, that came from the linear way, or you click on best view and you can see those opportunities, things like that. So I just wanted you guys to have that because I think it's important as we start working with some spreadsheets to move forward. That's our first attempt at a flipped sales meeting. I hope this this model works. We're going to give it a shot, and I'm looking forward to our one-on-ones where we can dive into the specific questions that apply to your area when it comes to forecasting.